What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna start a new series, really taking a deeper dive at some of my favorite pedals, showing what I love about them, what I listen for when I'm trying new stuff out. We're gonna look at compressors, drives, boosts, preamps, delays, verbs, all the fun stuff. So I'm starting to shoot a lot of those this week. Today we're gonna look at the Soundriver from the Sound of Justice effects. So just a little history on this pedal. There was like an overdrive preampy loud boost pedal that came out, I believe in the 70s, that was then adapted by Prescription Electronics. Both of those earlier adaptations, I believe, are discontinued. So it's super cool that builders are getting these pedals into the hands of more people. So first we'll take a look at some drier amp tones, just see what it's actually doing to the character of the breakup. And then we'll throw on some wet effects and see what it sounds like once we add those into the mix too. Just for reference, I'm playing my Gretsch Power Jet with the TV Jones pickups in it, and then running into two Tonexes with Tone Shepherd captures. On the right, you're gonna hear his Prosonic capture. On the left, you're gonna hear one of his AC30s. This is absolutely one of my favorite pedals, so let's go ahead and dive into what makes it so special. First, we're just gonna look at things completely clean. The only thing I have on is my API compressor. That's not doing a ton, just giving me a little bit of squeeze. So here's what we have going on clean. Cool, so not completely clean, but a lot of headroom there. And when you dig in, it really starts to respond in the low mids, which is kind of what I look for in a clean tone. So I've got some settings dialed up here, which is what I usually run it at. Adding a little bit of treble, taking out some bass, keeping the volume. There's a ton of volume in this pedal, so you don't really need that much to actually run it at Unity. I think it's like 9 o'clock or something like that. So again, just dry guitar, no wet effects. Here's what that sounds like at those settings. Here's off. And back on again. Cool, so I just hear like a massive push going on. It's really adding some excitement to the tone and bringing out some of those upper mids that I really enjoy. Let's take a look at everything at noon as far as EQ goes, and we'll kind of work from there. All right, so clean again. And on. Cool, so a little bit sweeter of a tone. With so much volume on tap, it can get a little bit boomy in the bass, so that's usually why I roll a little bit out of it, but still a super round, full tone. If I was running something like single coils more often, I'd probably actually run a little bit fuller of an EQ on this pedal. Let's start by bringing that treble all the way down, and then we'll work through the whole range of that knob. So obviously treble wide open is kind of a little bit ice picky, so let's roll that back to like 3. Awesome. Let's go back to noon on the treble, and then let's work with the bass knob. All right, here's bass all the way out. Compared with clean. This would work great if you're working on the neck pickup of maybe a humbucker guitar. Just to give you that extra cut and clarity. Here's clean again. A little bit more bass. About 1 or 2 o'clock now. So right about there feels like a really fun, snappy, responsive tone that has a little bit of pushback too. So when you're doing a little bit more of the twang thing, which is actually my clean tone kind of goes that way, you don't want it to be so thin in the lows and low mids that you kind of lose the body to it. So working that bass knob up really kind of gives you that thud and the presence that this pedal naturally has. And then close to all the way up, you're getting a response like this. Awesome. So I'd probably use that if I really wanted a pronounced picking part on a single coil guitar, just adding some weight to that tone. So let's go back to noon on the EQ and start working with the gain range. All right, so here's the pedal off again. Awesome. Let's roll it up to 9 o'clock. All right, up to 12. All right, now we're at around 3 on the gain and just brought the level back a little bit to balance that out. You'll almost hear this start to collapse on itself in the low mids. That's just the nature of this drive. It sounds really explosive and kind of spitty when you start to open up the gain range. It's incredibly tight and punchy in that lower to medium gain, but is really explosive and fun when you start to open it up. If I pick it a little bit lighter, you can get that kind of explosive sound to back off a little bit. So super dynamic. I'll throw this on the neck pickup and we can still retain some of that clarity. My favorite thing about this pedal is how the notes almost seem to just bloom. And they really do that once you start opening up the aggressiveness of that gain. Once you back down those dynamics a little bit, this pedal can kind of do whatever you want it to. All right, so let's move back to where I typically start with this pedal, and we'll throw in some wet effects and just see how it interacts with those. All right, so I've got the drive back at 9 o'clock, a little bit lower on the bass, and opening up the treble a smidge, and here's what we sound like. Just pushing the amps in a really nice way in those low mids while kind of opening up the highs as well. Let's see what that sounds like with some wet effects. So this is coming from the Meris LVX and MercuryX. Again, here's the tone without that pedal on. All right, let's open that gain up a little bit. Yeah, so to me, this just adds so much character to that clean sound, and I just really use this most as kind of a loud, interesting, almost to the verge of breaking up, and you can obviously get that when you dig in, but it's just such a present, loud, clean sound. So I switch between this and my AP, Hudson Broadcast AP pedal. That pedal gives kind of a flatter, more splatty response when I want that. But this Soundriver just cuts so well in a mix, and it makes those notes feel really rewarding to play, especially when you're talking, not running real amps. It helps to have some of that feel feeding into those just to get that feel back. Let me show you a couple other sounds that I really just use this pedal as like an exciter. So this is a patch from Kenyon Reed. It's kind of his ghost trim on the MercuryX. So this is taking just kind of a normal cloud reverb and putting a really wide kind of fluttering trim on the hard left and right. So here's what that would sound like with no dry pedals on other than the compressor. And if we just add a little bit of push from the Soundriver. For more of just a swell setting, this is what I typically use. Again, this is just going to be nothing, no dry pedals on other than the comp. Cool. And then if I wanted like a screaming lead tone type thing, this is going to be a sound I would use. Again, just the compression on. Awesome. Well, I hope that was a really good just look into this pedal. I know a couple companies make different versions of this, but I've really bonded with the Sound of Justice effects. Check out a pedal or two If you like the sound of this one, he's got a ton of great builds that he does. All I know is this one's staying for a long, long time. So anyway, thanks for checking this one out. Lots more on the way. We'll see you in the next one.